TikTok isn't going anywhere. I'll explain later. In Los Angeles, 7 massive wildfires still burning, all at the same time. More on that later. J.D. Vance, the vice president-elect, says Trump won't pardon violent January 6ers. Yes, just pardon all the peaceful January 6 protesters, none of them. The Pope has been awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Now all he needs is an Oscar. Biden says he's not giving himself a pardon before he leaves office. I'm pretty sure the Supreme Court already gave him one. I mean, that ruling, that immunity ruling, also applies to ex-Democratic presidents too, right? You never know with that Supreme Court. Well, Smartmatic's $2.7 billion lawsuit against Fox News will continue. And it is now day 6 of the massive wildfires in Los Angeles. The death toll in Los Angeles has now hit 16. Also, 16 are reported missing. 16 of those deaths were from the fire in Altadena. Altadena is 14 miles north of Los Angeles, right next to Pasadena. Latest reports indicate that the fire is 30% contained, with 5 firefighters there being treated for injuries. I'm talking about Altadena. More than 7,000 homes and buildings have been destroyed there, whereas the average home sells for $4.5 million in the Pacific Palisades. The average home in Altadena goes for roughly $1.3 million. While the Pacific Palisades is 80% white, Altadena is a little below 50% white. The median household income in Altadena, $123,000. In the Pacific Palisades, it's $208,000. I bring this up because of the 30 people arrested so far on suspicion of looting, 25 were in Altadena. Just 4, possibly 5, in the Pacific Palisades. Does that seem balanced? Now, with nearly 43,000 residents, Altadena's population is twice the size of the Pacific Palisades, but doesn't seem proportionate. 1,680 National Guard troops have now been deployed to help all first responders. That's up from about 600 earlier in the week. Federal Emergency Management Agency FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell said Los Angeles was totally prepared for these fires, adding that it's impossible to be primed for unprecedented 100-mile-per-hour winds. What's also unprecedented is an incoming president publicly attacking the leaders of a community that are being devastated by a disaster. Trump has repeatedly taken to social media, blaming California's, quote, incompetent politicians for these fires. No mention of climate change, which he calls a hoax. No criticism of real estate developers creating urban sprawl, building homes in regions prone to wildfires, and then selling those homes to people unwilling to pay for the government services necessary to mitigate climate disaster. President Biden has promised that the federal government will cover 100% of the costs associated with these fires for the next 180 days. But Chairman of the Senate Republican Conference, John Barrasso, he's a Republican from Wyoming. Barrasso is the 3rd most powerful Republican in the Senate. On Sunday, he launched into an attack on Democratic leadership in California, claiming they were responsible for the fires. Senator Barrasso said the Senate will approve funding to rebuild California, but not without, he said, strings attached. Barrasso is from Wyoming, which, according to the U.S. Department of Commerce, has an annual gross domestic product of about $45 billion, as opposed to California, which has an annual GDP of $4 trillion. That's about 15% of our nation's entire economy. But this hick from Wyoming is attaching strings to helping out the state that keeps his state, Wyoming, afloat. Wyoming makes up 0.17% of our population. 0.17% of our population. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, which is the fifth largest economy in the world and 12% of America's population, Gavin Newsom officially invited Donald Trump to survey the damage from the fires, but so far the president-elect hasn't taken him up on the offer. So here are some hard truths for Donald Trump and the Republicans and that hick senator from Wyoming, Barrasso, who want to kick California when it's down. Here are some hard truths. The Los Angeles Fire Department's budget increased last year by $58.4 million. Initially, it was going to be reduced by $17.6 million, but it was increased by $58.4 million. Get your facts right. I find it rich that Republicans of all people are speaking out against budget cuts for essential services in Los Angeles. You know what it is? They're only against imaginary budget cuts. That's what it is. These were imaginary budget cuts. There were no budget cuts. There are 7 massive wildfires burning all at the same time. This is climate catastrophe. Pretending this is about something else, saying it's about forest mismanagement or not preparing properly. This is nothing short of shilling for the oil companies. The Los Angeles Fire Department receives $1.24 billion a year. $1,240,000 a year, as opposed to the Los Angeles Police Department, which gets $3.1 billion a year. 27% of Los Angeles's entire budget, nearly one-third, 27% of the LA budget, is spent on police. Now, let's turn to the state of California, some hard truths for Republicans. See, they want to hurt Gavin Newsom. They're terrified of Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. I think he could have beaten Trump in 2024. So here are some hard truths for Republicans. Since 2019, California's fire budget has doubled from $2 billion to $3.8 billion a year. Doubled. Newsom doubled it. Since 2019, the number of California firefighters has nearly doubled. That's in 5 years, he doubled the number of California firefighters. But here is my old Congresswoman, Maxine Waters, a Democrat from Los Angeles, and the ranking member on the House Finance Committee, spelling it out perfectly.
Services cost money, and we should be willing to get the richest people in this country, the richest 1% that is protected, make sure they pay their fair taxes so that we can have the money to provide the services.
Yes. Thank you. So that's the good Waters. Here is the bad Waters, Jesse Waters of Fox News, not Fax News, Fox News. Jesse Waters proving once again he is a fascist.
A full federal takeover is needed. Invoke the Stafford Act. The state's overwhelmed. Martial law might have to be declared.
Martial law might have to be declared. The Stafford Act, which he pulled out of his arse, means nothing. It just sounds smart. It doesn't give the president power to declare martial law. And by the way, here's what you're up against. Martial law isn't free. Deploying American troops to California costs money. Who's going to pay for that? California? All right. One of the other Republican talking points right now is that the fires spread because of decreased pressure in the fire hydrants. Well, fire hydrants are not used to put out wildfires. They are for localized fires. They're there to put out fires that are inside 1 or 2 houses. Now, yes, the pressure did go down because no system can be prepared for so many localized fires. And yes, one of the reservoirs was offline to repair its cover, and that did reduce some water pressure. Gavin Newsom increased spending on forest management by a factor of 10 over the past 5 years. This is the raking that Donald Trump says Newsom isn't doing. $2 billion in emergency spending on top of the $200 million a year that the state of California is already spending on forest management. There is no shortage of water in Southern California. There are 7 massive wildfires which stretch resources thin. It's why Mexico is coming. They're sending in firefighters. Reservoirs, despite what you're being misled to believe by Republicans, reservoirs in Los Angeles are at record levels. Let me repeat, reservoirs in Los Angeles are at record levels. The problem isn't water management. Yes, Governor Newsom is asking for an independent commission to determine why water pressure was occasionally low when it came to the fire hydrants, but that was for localized homes, localized problems amidst a massive conflagration. Quite frankly, the city, the firefighters, the infrastructure has held up remarkably well considering what they're up against. When you watch this on the news, it's a tragedy that anybody died, but if it weren't for proper responses and management, a lot more people would be dead right now. Let's talk about the Delta smelt policy that Trump and the Republicans repeatedly point to. Well, the Delta smelt policy in California played zero role in lack of water pressure for the fire hydrants. Fresh water in Northern California, that's where the Delta smelt is, in Northern California, the fresh water in Northern California is used to desalinate wetlands to not only protect the Delta smelt, but farmland. You can't grow anything when the wetlands don't have enough fresh water. When the wetlands have too much salt water from the bay and not enough fresh water from the reservoirs, nothing grows and everyone starves. That water to protect the Delta smelt is also to protect crops. The water pumped into the wetlands is earmarked for farmers. It's earmarked for the Delta region. It's earmarked to protect the Delta smelt and rice and potatoes and cattle and chicken. That water was never earmarked for Southern California, which, as I just said, doesn't need that water. It has enough. And anybody who claims otherwise is shilling for the oil companies. You see, the oil companies are not stupid, and they need to get ahead of this story and make sure they're useful idiots like Donald Trump and the entire Republican Party to make sure they not only call global warming a hoax, but also deflect blame for the massive human costs exacted by climate change. They have to deflect the blame away from fossil fuels and onto the government. Say the government is incompetent. These fires are climate change. The only humans who are responsible for this are the ones who have denied climate change, the ones who have paid for the phony science to deny climate change. Blaming Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass for not being prepared for this apocalypse is like the guy who smokes 2 packs a day, gets lung cancer, and blames his discomfort on the brand of ointment the nurse uses on his bed sores. Roger Stone tweeted this out. This is how craven these people are. It's the Delta smelt. This is the fish Gavin Newscum burned California down in order to save. Can you believe somebody would tweet that amidst this tragedy? This is Donald Trump's best friend, who he pardoned once, but wouldn't pardon him again. Roger Stone didn't get that second pardon. Now, Roger Stone is back in the fold, hanging out at Mar-a-Lago, advising Trump quietly, but he didn't get 2 pardons from Trump. He only got 1. Here's Roger Stone being filmed by a documentarian right after Roger Stone discovers Trump isn't going to pardon him for a second time. A pardon Stone was asking for because of the role he played on January 6th. Here is Roger Stone. Just watch how his hands shake and the rage, the unchecked rage inside this monster.
Jared Kushner has an IQ of 70. He's coming to Miami. We will eject him from Miami very quickly. He'll be leaving very quickly. He has 100 security guards. I'll have 5,000 security guards. You want to fight? Let's fight. You and your abortionist daughter.
Isn't that nice to talk about Trump's daughter that way? Bringing up the story about Ivanka's alleged 2 abortions that she had in high school. Roger Stone bringing that up, talking on the phone to a friend, talking about his 5,000 security guards, which I would assume would have been the Proud Boys. We do know that the Proud Boys allegedly did security for Roger Stone in the lead up to January 6th. Good people, good people. This is the mop-up for January 13th, 2025. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please like this episode. Just hit the like button. That way I remain in your feed. And the best way to help me as we go into this new horrible season is to share these episodes. Copy and paste the links to my episodes and share them with a friend, because the only reason anybody listens to me is because of my listeners sharing this. Only 7 days left until Trump resoils the Oval Office. Steve Bannon has declared war on Elon Musk. Bannon hates Musk. He hates the fact that Musk has become so influential and came out in favor of foreign work visas for tech workers. Steve Bannon over the weekend gave an interview with an Italian newspaper and said, quote, of Elon Musk, quote, "Why do we have South Africans, the most racist people on earth, white South Africans, making any comments at all on what goes on in the United States," unquote. Wow, if Steve Bannon calls you racist. We are being told Trump is scheduling a blitzkrieg next week of 100 executive orders on day one. This is how he works. Now, most of them, if not all, will be challenged in the courts and will be inoperable. But this is how he's going to roll. We are being told to pass massive tax cuts on day one. Trump could invoke the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. What is going on in this picture? We're using artificial intelligence to look into the future. So this is an actual forecast of Donald Trump on day one in the Oval Office. You can see he brought along his pet rat, Muskie, from Mar-a-Lago. And don't be fooled. Those are Jimmy Choo knockoffs. Those are not real Jimmy Choos, okay? So that's one thing he can do. He could declare a public health emergency to shut down the border. You might remember in 2019, he declared a national emergency to reallocate $8 billion in order to build that wall along the border. That was the first time in American history a president ever declared an emergency in order to circumvent the legislative branch so he could spend money not approved by Congress. He took money that had been allocated by Congress for the Pentagon, and he took it and moved it towards building the wall that never got built. And then a year later, he updated that emergency order to keep migrants out of the country based on a public health threat posed by COVID. You might remember this was the Title 14 move. It's Title 14 is part of a U.S. public health law that he invoked to stop the spread of communicable diseases. Stephen Miller had already been planning to use Title 42 before COVID struck. An outbreak of mumps had been discovered inside an ICE detention facility a year before COVID. And Stephen Miller was on top of it and said, let's use Title 42 to keep the migrants out. Biden immediately rescinded Title 42. Title 42 was tied up in the courts, and it hasn't been resolved yet by the Supreme Court. All of the executive orders next Monday will be tied up in the courts. Using my patented artificial intelligence forecasting, using our predictive technology, I am now able to present an executive order we should expect a week from today.
I have just signed Executive Order 94, mandating that from this day forward, the state of California will now be called Trumpifornia, and the city of Los Angeles is now called Trump-Trangiles.
Trump-Trangiles. The technology is new, but this is my patented and trademarked AI forecaster that can see into the future. It's not perfect yet. Okay, where are we? Here again, my patented predictive AI technology. This is another executive order. We're peering into the future. A week from today, here is another executive order my technology is saying.
And finally, I just signed Executive Order number 100, mandating all the letters that spell out the name Rosie O'Donnell are hereby banned from the alphabet.
He's banning any letters that make up the word Rosie O'Donnell. Seems kind of petty to me, but that's my official AI trademarked forecaster that looks a week into the future. Anthony Blinken, who is our Secretary of State until next Monday, said the annexation of Greenland isn't happening. J.D. Vance said yesterday, however, annexing Greenland is a great idea and that there are ways to make it happen. The Prime Minister of Greenland said yesterday he wants independence from Denmark, is not interested in becoming an American, but would meet with Trump. It was nice to see Presidents Obama and Trump sharing pleasantries at Jimmy Carter's funeral. But using my patented artificial intelligence lip and skull analysis, I can now ascertain what was actually said, what Donald Trump said to Melania, and what he said to Barack Obama at Jimmy Carter's funeral. This is my patented AI lip and skull analysis.
I can't hold it in any longer. Melania, this Ozempic colon is going spastic on me.
Okay, so he's saying his Ozempic colon is going spastic on him. Now look at the expressions on Doug Emhoff, Laura Bush, everybody. They're smelling his flatulence, and they're trying to be polite. They know it's him, that they want to be it's just a horrible, horrible stench. Soon you'll see George W. Bush about to just toss lunch from the stench.
I hear they're serving your favorite fresh cats and dogs. You still eat cats and dogs, right? That doesn't go against your Muslim faith, Osama.
That's funny, Donald. Hey, man, is your wife still sleeping with that Secret Service agent? That's what I heard, or has she moved on to the 101st Airborne?
That is actual artificial intelligence patented by the David Feldman Show using state-of-the-art lip and skull analysis to determine what is actually being said at President Jimmy Carter's funeral. Well, an awkward moment last week at the Carter funeral when Karen Pence, wife of Donald Trump's first vice president, Mike Pence, when she remained seated and didn't acknowledge Trump or Melania. So someone Karen Pence believed in turned out to be completely wrong, immoral, and dangerous. I wonder if there are other people and other ideas that Karen Pence believes in, unaware that those people and beliefs are not only wrong, but dangerous. If you got Trump wrong, I wonder what else you've gotten wrong in your life, Karen Pence. I do know she had a tough week, Karen Pence. She was hurting. We were all hurting, not just Jimmy Carter, but some sad news. Anita Bryant, an aging beauty queen, let me start again. Some sad news. Anita Bryant, an aging beauty queen who tried to jumpstart her recording career back in the 70s by convincing voters in Dade County, Florida, to reverse a law banning discrimination against gays, has died at the age of 84. She was one of the original persecutors of the LGBTQ community. Thanks to Anita Bryant, gay adoption had been banned in Florida for nearly 30 years. But humble to the end, Anita Bryant asked that she simply be remembered as just another ignorant crone from Florida. That was in her will. She said, I don't want a big funeral. I just want to be remembered as another ignorant crone from Florida. Well, I have a soft spot in my heart for Anita Bryant because she was the first person to teach me the joy of hating and wishing ill on people. Not on gay people, on her. She taught me the thrill, the purification, the cleansing nature of wishing ill on Anita Bryant, and I thank her for that. In 1977, Anita Bryant became the first person to get pied when a gay activist tossed a pie in her face. This is a famous picture of her getting pied. I don't know, does that look like pie? I sure hope that's pie they tossed in her face. It could be something else. It sure doesn't look like pie to me. She ended up divorcing her husband and filing for bankruptcy not once, but twice. So Anita Bryant, you were right when you said, if I pray hard enough, those prayers will be answered. You got divorced and you ended up broke. Now Anita is going to discover that God is gay. God is gay. She's about to learn that. You never hear of a Mrs. God. 6 billion years, no Mrs. God. And Jesus, we all know Jesus. God had Jesus through in vitro. Mary was the surrogate. God is gay. And she's going to discover that right before he sends her down to hell. The devil, all man. All man. Straight as the day is long. Devil, not gay. And this is a fact. These are facts. This is the mop-up for January 13th, 2025. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Please, like, share, comment. Oh, comment. Please comment. I read all your comments. As per legislation passed and signed into law by President Joe Biden last year, we are 6 days away from TikTok being banned in the United States, supposedly. Hoping to buy time, TikTok took to the Supreme Court on Friday asking for emergency relief. TikTok isn't going. Listen, I'm going to explain to you why TikTok isn't going anywhere. 170 million Americans use the video sharing platform each month. For many Americans, it's their only source for news, which explains pretty much everything. Even though Joe Biden signed into law a ban on TikTok, he kicked off his re-election campaign last year by opening an account on TikTok. So nobody is serious about getting rid of TikTok here in America. And the argument, if you listen to the Supreme Court oral arguments Friday, you realize it's not a serious argument. It's been estimated that if shut down, 2 million American creators would lose a combined $300 million in income each month. Federal law passed last year gives TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, until the 19th of this month to sell TikTok to a company not tied to the Chinese government. The bill was passed after lawmakers, this was bipartisan, lawmakers last year agreed that TikTok serves as a national security risk by allowing a foreign adversary like China to harvest data on American citizens, as well as program videos that sway public opinion with pro-China propaganda. Lawyers for TikTok argued Friday before the Supreme Court that this new law is what is called a bill of attainder, noting, the lawyers noted that the U.S. Constitution specifically forbids bills of attainder. What are bills of attainder? This is something you had to learn in high school and quickly forgot. A bill of attainder is legislation passed by Congress that criminally convicts an individual, and such a conviction is unconstitutional, since criminal convictions are reserved for the judicial branch. That's what a bill of attainder essentially is. It's banned in the Constitution. In other words, a democratically controlled Congress cannot put Elon Musk on trial for all the crimes he's committed. It has to be done in our courts, not in Congress. Although Congress does have a jail. Lawyers arguing for the United States government said this new law is not a bill of attainder, that it is merely a ban on foreign ownership of a product used in America. Lawyers for the government said America bans foreign ownership all the time. For example, Biden just blocked a Japanese company from buying U.S. steel. That was last week. Biden cited national security risks. It's also against the law for foreign companies to own television and radio stations. It's why we had to grant Rupert Murdoch U.S. citizenship before he could buy all those Fox television stations. Lawyers representing the government said they are not banning TikTok so much as demanding that it be sold to a company friendlier to American interests. Lawyers for TikTok argued the platform is not owned by China. They insisted the parent company, ByteDance, is registered in the Cayman Islands and that the Chinese government is just one of several foreign entities that has a financial stake in TikTok. TikTok lawyers also argued the new law violates TikTok's freedom of speech that is guaranteed under the U.S. Constitution. The Supreme Court, however, Friday seemed dubious that a foreign corporation enjoys First Amendment protections. Lawyers for the government said that argument is bogus, since even if a foreign corporation enjoyed First Amendment protections, this bill isn't banning speech, it's merely banning foreign ownership, which happens all the time. Government lawyers argue TikTok serves as a national security risk because American citizens punch in their personal information, which can be gathered by China and then used to blackmail American citizens. I don't know. Do you believe that? Do you think there's enough information on TikTok that the Chinese government can use to bribe and what? They're worried that David Feldman. Do you want people to know that I watch videos on makeup tips? I mean, TikTok, it's not like a porn site. What could you be watching on TikTok that you would be ashamed of, other than this show when I occasionally post clips? So the general consensus after the oral arguments was the Supreme Court appears ready to uphold the ban. So I get a lot of things wrong, but what does it mean? What does it mean? Why does the ban go into effect one day before Donald Trump is sworn in? He gets sworn in on the 20th. TikTok has until the 19th to sell. Because I believe, and I think I'm right this time, I believe Congress never intended to ban TikTok. Trump initially was all for banning TikTok during his first administration, but then Jeff Yass, who owns a large stake in TikTok, he's a billionaire from Pennsylvania. Jeff Yass owns a large stake in TikTok, and he ain't China. He's one of those foreign entities that bought into TikTok because it's registered in the Cayman Islands, okay? So Jeff Yass wants to protect his investment, and he did it by donating to Trump's campaign through Club for Growth. He donated millions to Club for Growth, which in turn donated millions to the Trump campaign. Jeff Yass, the billionaire, hired the odious Kellyanne Conway as a lobbyist for him to sway Donald Trump. And then suddenly last year, Donald Trump reversed course for some reason and said during the campaign, you know, on second thought, I'm no longer for banning TikTok. Before oral arguments on Friday, Trump filed an amicus brief siding with TikTok, urging the Supreme Court to wait until he becomes president so that he can negotiate a deal that pleases both TikTok, Jeff Yass, and America's national security concerns. And that's what I think is going to happen. The New York Times on Friday said it expects the court to rule quickly on TikTok. But what is not being reported is this law grants the president power to freeze the ban for 90 days in order to give TikTok more time to find a suitor. I mean, it's written into the law that TikTok has until the 19th to sell. Why did they pick the 19th? Because it's a day before Trump gets inaugurated, and they write into the law, and nobody's reporting this, that Trump will have not a 90-day freeze on the ban. Given that the Supreme Court seems to be indicating that it's likely to uphold the ban, TikTok, I believe, will have 3 months to find a new owner. I don't think you're going to lose access to TikTok. Now, lawyers for TikTok argued that the algorithm is proprietary and is protected by the First Amendment, and that the company, ByteDance, doesn't want to turn the algorithm over to a new owner. But I believe in order to stay in business here in America, TikTok, ByteDance, will probably sever the American version of TikTok. I suspect in 90 days after Trump's inauguration, ByteDance will have sold TikTok, at least the American version of TikTok, to someone like, Elon Musk, and it will remain available. If, however, TikTok is banned, and I don't think it's going to be, I don't think this is serious, but if TikTok is banned, that app, according to the New York Times, would most likely stay on your phone. The law simply forbids the app from being downloaded onto new devices. You won't be able to access the app at the Google App Store or the iTunes App Store, but it will stay on your phone. The Times also says that it will degrade, the app will degrade over, say, a 12-month period. It will become unusable because it degrades as users are unable to access new updates. It depends. It may take a year or two for the degradation to take hold because you made the updates. I mean, how many years can you go without an update? That's one likely outcome if the ban goes through, which I don't think it is. It is important to remember, however, that India completely banned TikTok in 2020. And in India, TikTok became completely inaccessible in India. So the app was still on the phones in India, but it couldn't connect with TikTok. Just to be on the safe side, Google, YouTube's parent company, donated $1 million to Donald Trump's inaugural committee last week. Facebook has fired its third-party fact-checkers and has put an end to its DEI program after Mark Zuckerberg, the chairman of Meta, Facebook, made those announcements. The number one search term on Google was, how do I deactivate my Facebook account? By the way, I'm on Blue Sky. Brazil informed Facebook it must provide answers this week as to why it discontinued its third-party fact-checking. So, former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro got a Trump invite to the inauguration. They have a problem in Brazil with Facebook and people not checking facts. Bolsonaro, you might remember, is banned from running for office until 2030. Imagine that. In a 5-2 vote, Brazil's Supreme Court found Bolsonaro guilty of abusing his power as president by spreading falsehoods about voter fraud and election integrity during the lead up to and following his loss to the current president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Bolsonaro is part of the transnational movement towards authoritarianism we're seeing in Italy, Hungary, and now Austria, as well as Great Britain and France. Both Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin are financing many of these right-wing groups, like in Germany and here in the United States. That would be the Republican Party. Bolsonaro has asked for permission to attend Trump's inauguration. It's unlikely to happen since he has had to surrender his passport. Nicolas Maduro was sworn in for a third term, despite, according to U.S. observers, losing his election back in July. Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, was detained before Maduro's inauguration after she spoke at a protest rally the night before Maduro's swearing in. On Friday, Joe Biden offered $25 million for information leading to Maduro's arrest. Also, Joe Biden refuses to recognize Maduro as Venezuela's rightful leader. Also on Friday, Biden extended temporary status to 600,000 Venezuelan migrants living here in the United States, making it much harder for Trump to deport them. Like I said, we are just 7 days away from Donald Trump resoiling the Oval Office. Fox News host Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearings for Defense Secretary begin tomorrow. The FBI background checks have been completed and were handed out to the Senate. And despite Majority Leader John Thune assuring Trump that the votes for Hegseth are there, these hearings are not going to be a cakewalk. There are, among other problems, credible rape and sexual harassment allegations leveled against this nominee. We are now entering the 8th year since the Me Too movement went national and global and brought down leaders in politics, business, and entertainment. I've gone over this. The Me Too movement comes out of the black community, like all great things. I've given you the history of the Me Too movement, but it started affecting white people in 2017. And one of the politicians forced to resign after several women stepped forward accusing him of sexual harassment and improper touching is Andrew Cuomo, the former governor of New York, who was forced to resign in August of 2021. According to an investigation conducted by the New York State Attorney General, that would be Letitia James, 11 workers stepped forward accusing Andrew Cuomo of groping, inappropriate behavior, as well as creating a hostile workplace. Cuomo admitted to making women feel uncomfortable. He said they were only uncomfortable because of what he called his public displays of affection. Yes, grabbing a state trooper's breast in front of her husband is just a public display of affection. But he denied any of that was sexual in nature. None of that is sexual. Rape isn't sexual in nature. It's power. The fact that you would think to say it's okay it wasn't sexual in nature shows your guilt. It's about power. It's not about sex. You pig. Cuomo held meetings with Kellyanne Conway last year trying to figure out how to rehabilitate his image. And now it's pretty much official. This pig, Andrew Cuomo, that's unfair to pigs. Cuomo is expected to announce next month he's running for mayor of New York City. He wants to be my mayor. That election will be held in November of this year. And oh, what choices I'm going to have. Cuomo would be going up against my current mayor, Eric Adams, just indicted by federal prosecutors in September of last year for taking $100,000 in illegal campaign donations and gifts from the government of Turkey. The mayor's black. This seems kind of, this is like the Carlos Watson indictment and conviction. The mayor's also accused of relying on fake donors in order to access $10 million in matching funds from the New York City Campaign Finance Program, which matches donations 8-1. In other words, for every dollar a candidate raises from an individual donor, the New York City Campaign Finance Program gives the candidate $8. You raise $1 million from individuals, you get $8 million from that fund. Considering this is New York, this is because he's black. The federal government is accusing Mayor Adams of using straw donors to qualify for those funds. By the way, I can't stand Eric Adams because of his policy on the migrants, but to get elected, if all he did to get elected mayor was take $100,000 in questionable gifts from the government of Turkey and had straw donors to get $8 million. How much was it? $8 million. Was it $8 million? No, $10 million. $10 million from the campaign finance program. That's because he's black. Seriously. So the federal government This is a federal case, and Adams is running for re-election. He's also agreed to cooperate with Donald Trump's incoming border czar, Tom Homan, in rounding up undocumented migrants, even though New York is a sanctuary city. So although he denies he's fishing for a pardon, I believe this is the reason Adams is going to cooperate with ICE. This is why I don't like Eric Adams. He's an ex-transit cop. He denies he's rounding up the migrants in the hope of receiving a pardon. So that's a nice choice I have. Adams or Cuomo. I'm sure there will be other people to vote for. So I hope somebody else is stepping forward. Senator Elizabeth Warren said Friday she has serious reservations about Trump's pick to head the IRS. That would be former Missouri Congressman Billy Long, not Billy Wide. It's Billy Long. My apologies. Billy Long, whose hearings are just around the corner. Warren suggested in a letter to Long that he has misrepresented his qualifications, and she said she wants to know if he is in fact a certified accountant, as he has led others to believe he is. This is a former congressman who's become a tax advisor. Of course he's been nominated by Trump. She asked for proof that he has a degree in tax law or accounting, and she said, I wonder how you've been able to gain employment as a tax advisor without these qualifications. Elizabeth Warren also suggested in her letter that Long, after leaving Congress, became a lobbyist for the Employee Retention Tax Credit, which Democrats insist has been used by corporations to commit massive tax fraud. So these will be interesting hearings. Like I said, it's a honey trap. Just the worst of the worst are being sucked into the Trump administration, and they're all going to be exposed. It's the ultimate honey trap. On November 21st of last year, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant charging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with crimes against humanity for the manner in which he conducted war against Hamas in Gaza. The United States and Israel are not signatories to the ICC, meaning Netanyahu is not required to turn himself in. He can be arrested, however, should he visit countries that are signatories. On Thursday, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives voted 243 to 140, imposing economic sanctions against top officials inside the ICC as punishment for the Netanyahu arrest warrant. 45 Democrats joined Republicans in voting yes for Texas Congressman Chip Roy's the Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act, which would sanction officials of the International Criminal Court who were involved in pursuing arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, along with Israel's former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. That is now the second bill to pass the Republican-controlled House this year. It moves on to the Senate. One House Republican, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, no friend to Israel, voted present. He didn't vote yes, he didn't vote no, he voted present. Massie was also the one Republican who voted against Mike Johnson for Speaker. Congressman Tim Burchett, Republican from Tennessee, took to the House floor before the vote to speak in favor of the sanctions. Now remember, last year, former Speaker Kevin McCarthy punched Burchett in the kidneys. I don't approve of kidney punches. However, this is what Tim Burchett said. This explained why he's voting for sanctions against the ICC. He's from Tennessee, and he wants you to know it. He said, quote, "The International Criminal Court, ICC, They don't believe Israel has the right to defend itself from terrorists. The United States and Israel are not members of the ICC for good reason, and without accident. He went on to say, Mr. Speaker, it's a dadgum sham court, is what it is. Hamas chose war, and dadgummit, Hamas got war. Dadgummit. Then he took a swig from a jug of corn mash marked X and asked, who wants possum? I mean, nobody talks that way. Nobody ever talked that way. Nobody in Tennessee says dadgummit. Again, I don't approve of punching Tim Burchett in the kidney. In voting against the bill, Democratic Congressman Jim McGovern from Massachusetts said, quote, there are over 40 million hungry people in this country who don't know where their next meal is going to come from. There are 40 million hungry people in the richest country on earth, and this is what Republicans choose to expend their political capital on? That is how Congressman Jim McGovern of Massachusetts explained why he's voting against this. Cato the Elder, the Roman senator, ended every speech, no matter what the subject. He would end every speech with the words, Cathargo delenda est, which means Carthage must be destroyed. Carthage was Rome's enemy. Cathargo delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. Didn't matter if they were naming a vomitorium after a military ruler, he'd vote yes and then say Cathargo delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. Congressman James McGovern of Massachusetts should end every speech with Quadra gentililian es America ni es suriunt, which in Latin says 40 million Americans are hungry. He should just end every speech saying Quadraginta millionis America ni suriunt. 40 million Americans are hungry. Like I said, this bill now heads to the Senate. Well, the December numbers are in, and border crossings are now at the lowest level in 4 years. Tom Homan, Trump's incoming border czar, has begun lowering expectations on just how massive the deportation program he's been promising is actually going to turn out to be. Homan has been making the rounds in Washington and on conservative talk shows, saying that unless Congress approves the funding, he won't be able to pull these deportations off. Homan says, I need an additional $86 billion a year to deport 1 million immigrants, but he insists it pays for itself. Of course, Economics 101. You get rid of the immigrants, lower food and construction costs. Everybody knows fewer workers means the price of labor goes down. Economics 101. If you're an effing Republican, which means you're economically illiterate. Last Tuesday, the House of Representatives passed its very first bill of the 119th Congress. It's called the Laken Riley Act, and it's named after a 22-year-old nursing student killed early last year while jogging. In a bench trial, that means no jury, a judge found an undocumented Venezuelan man guilty of the murder. This man, who was found guilty, is said to have entered the country illegally from Venezuela. The bill calls for mandatory detention and deportation of any immigrant arrested or charged with a crime, as small as shoplifting. Not convicted, just charged or just arrested. In other words, an immigrant can just be arrested, not charged, and ICE can then detain and deport them. To enforce this Laken Riley Act, ICE, which should be abolished, ICE estimating they would need an additional $4 billion a year in funding. They're going to require more detention centers and staff. Who benefits? Cui bono? This is to house immigrants. $4 billion a year to house immigrants who have just been arrested. Not charged, not convicted, just arrested. It passed in the House on Tuesday by a vote of 264 to 159. 48 Democrats voted in favor of it. It moved on to the Senate. This is Senator Katie Britt, an intellectual heavyweight. She is a Republican from Alabama, and she has been assigned the task of shepherding the Laken Riley Act through the Senate. Majority Leader John Thune scheduled what is called a procedural vote on Thursday. I'm going to explain to you what a procedural vote means. You hear about it all the time, and it's shorthand, but it's not shorthand. It's an actual thing. Procedural votes are they're in the Senate. They're votes on whether the Senate should proceed with the bill, hence the term procedural. In this case, the Laken Riley Act, which passed in the House, they were voting. It was a procedural vote Thursday. It's not to pass the bill. It's whether to proceed with it. A procedural vote is on what kind of rules we will obey in debating this bill. How long can it be debated, and what kind of amendments will be attached to it? Again, a procedural vote in the Senate is a motion to proceed, and it's a leading indicator as to how many votes it will have in its final form. It can be filibustered to death, which means all it took was 8 Democratic senators to vote for it, and it would pass. You could overcome a filibuster if you could get 8 Democrats on board. And again, if it doesn't survive a procedural vote, then the bill never gets voted on. It is bad legislation. Laken Riley is bad legislation. Maria Teresa Kumar, president of Voto Latino, urged Democrats in the Senate to kill it on Thursday. She said Laken Riley would serve as a chilling first step toward widespread family separation. Tim Kaine voted against it. He's the Democratic senator from Virginia. He took to the well of the Senate and reminded his colleagues that the number of immigrants has doubled in America since 1980, while the crime rate has fallen by 60%. He said immigrants do not bring crime. Senator Kaine pointed to a recent study of crime data going back 150 years. This is a study conducted by Northwestern University. The study concluded immigrants throughout our nation's last 150 years have consistently been incarcerated at much lower rates than native-born Americans. Tim Kaine then pointed to another study conducted by the Department of Justice looking at all crimes committed in the state of Texas between 2012 and 2018. Our own Department of Justice concluded that undocumented immigrants are arrested 50% fewer times than native-born U.S. citizens for violent crimes or drug crimes. Jamie Raskin is the House Judiciary's ranking member. He voted against Laken Riley when it was before the House on Tuesday. Raskin, who moonlights as a law professor, called Laken Riley unconstitutional. Like I said earlier, He said this: immigrants could be placed, if this is passed, immigrants could be placed in for-profit detention centers and then deported just for being arrested, not charged or convicted. He said Laken Riley denies immigrants the due process guaranteed to everyone in our 14th Amendment. He said it would reverse 30 years of immigration law. Raskin warned that Laken Riley, the Laken Riley Act, again, would allow ICE, which should be abolished, it would allow ICE to detain and deport immigrants just for being arrested. Not for being charged, arrested. These are your nurses, your people who take care of your children, people who do your gardening, people who work in slaughterhouses, people who wait on tables, people who work in nursing homes. Raskin says that the laws already on the books call for deporting any immigrant who is found guilty of a crime. The law already says if you're found guilty of a crime and you're an immigrant or undocumented, you're automatically deported. He points out Laken Riley would change the law to detain and deport people who have simply been arrested, even if the charges have been dropped. Again, this is important. Jamie Raskin, is warning that immigrants could be detained and or deported just because a cop arrested them, even if charges were never brought in the first place. And we know how honorable cops are, right? He warned immigrants will be detained and deported for misdemeanors without conviction. He said there are massive sweeps that ICE and the police will be conducting, and they often round up totally innocent people. They will be deported just for getting arrested. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal represents Washington's 7th congressional district that includes most of Seattle. She voted against the bill last week, calling it a great boon to for-profit detention companies. So I've been talking about the two largest companies in the for-profit detention racket over the years. I've told you about the GEO Group and CoreCivic. And I've told you they turned out to be some of the largest donors last year to the Trump campaign. GEO Group's stock surged 42% right after Trump's November 5th victory. CoreCivic's stock rose 30%. And here is what is so especially evil about CoreCivic and GEO Group. These are for-profit detention centers, okay? So it's going to cost, they say, $4 billion to enforce the Laken Riley Act. Why? Well, they say we have to build more detention centers. And how do they run these for-profit detention centers? Instead of hiring American citizens, see, these CoreCivic and the GEO Group will go to a town and say, let us build a for-profit detention center here and give us tax breaks because we create jobs. But their business model is undocumented Americans, not just rounding up undocumented Americans, but using them as a source of cheap labor. There is evil in this world. There is evil in this world. And it takes the name of the Geo Group and Core Civic. This is pure, unadulterated evil. Where are the religious leaders in this country? Why are you not speaking out against these for-profit detention centers which use undocumented Americans for cheap labor? Instead of hiring American citizens to work in these for-profit detention centers, Core Civic and the Geo Group hire the inmates. They coerce the inmates and pay them anywhere between $1 to $4 a day to perform work in the kitchen, work in the laundry, to perform janitorial services, and even clerical work. That's what makes these for-profit detention centers even more profitable, because they don't have to pay prevailing wages. They can just hire the inmates for pretty much nothing. In other words, the business model for these detention centers cracking down on undocumented migrants is hiring undocumented migrants. If you want to call $1 a day or $4 a day hiring. If you don't think this is evil, then you're evil. Then you're evil. If you're not outraged by this, then you're evil. And if you're a person of the cloth and you're not speaking out against this, you are worthless. You are satanic. This is pure evil. Congresswoman Jayapal called Laken Riley merely cosmetic because it doesn't address our flawed immigration system. Jamie Raskin reminded the House of Representatives on Tuesday that there was a major immigration bill last year that would have addressed the serious issues facing our immigration system, but as we all know, Trump killed it. Like I said, Laken Riley passed in the House with 48 Democrats voting yes. Now, the procedural vote in the Senate was Thursday. And remember, all it took was 8 Democrats to kill it. This is a bill that needs to be killed. This is the second bill to come out of the Republican-controlled House. It's now before the Senate, and we have to kill it dead in its tracks. Ruben Gallego, the newly elected senator from Arizona, and Mark Kelly, the senior senator from Arizona, early on said they were going to vote in favor of Thursday's procedural bill. These are Democrats. Democratic Senators Gary Peters and Elisa Slotkin of Michigan both signaled early that they would vote in favor of Laken Riley. Elisa Slotkin was just elected to the Senate. She hasn't run for re-election in 6 years, and already she says she's voting for it. John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, Democrat, 2 years into a 6-year term, said he would be voting in favor of Laken Riley. Fetterman is planning to become the first Democrat to visit Mar-a-Lago before Trump's inauguration. Fetterman defended his decision, saying he is a senator to all Pennsylvanians, not just Democrats. I'm starting to smell Fetterman pulling a reverse Arlen Specter on us. This is what is called a reverse Arlen Specter. Jackie Rosen, who just got reelected to the Senate from Nevada, also signaled early support for Laken Riley. So did John Hickenlooper of Colorado. I think that is a name invented by W.C. Fields. Senator Hickenlooper of Colorado. I'm pretty sure he's not a real person. I think this is just something that W.C. Fields invented. And so did Jon Ossoff of Georgia. He signaled early on that he would vote in favor of last Thursday's procedural vote. Ossoff of Georgia will be up for re-election in 2 years. This is a bad piece of legislation. It is an evil piece of legislation that will transfer $4 billion to the for-profit detention center industry. And yet, despite this being evil legislation, the procedural vote passed overwhelmingly on Thursday, with 33 Democrats voting in favor of it, including Democratic Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Again, it's a procedural vote. Means they voted to proceed with it. So I'm going to give Chuck Schumer the benefit of the doubt here. I believe this is what's going on here, and I hope I'm right. 33 Democrats voted in favor of the procedural bill. That means 33 Democrats can now say they voted for Laken Riley, and they bought themselves political cover for when they eventually vote against it. They can say, as John Kerry famously said in 2004, I was for it before I was against it. I think what is going on here is Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat, voted yes on the procedural vote, but now he attaches amendments. He's going to weigh it down with garbage that makes it impossible for Republicans to support, so that when the bill finally comes out of committee, Senate Democrats can then claim, I liked the original version of this bill, but now, in good conscience, I cannot vote for it. That is what I think is going to happen. I think Senator Schumer knows how to kill a bill and provide political cover to senators. But you need to call your Democratic senator right now and tell them to kill the Laken Riley Act. The U.S. Capitol Switchboard, the phone number is 202-224-3121. Be polite, ask for your Democratic senator, and leave a message. Say, please do not vote in favor of Senate Bill number 5, the Laken Riley Act, when it comes out of committee. Say something along the lines that it unfairly targets our immigrant community and, more importantly, gives way too much power to ICE. Please do this. Politely call the U.S. Capitol Switchboard today. The phone number is 202-224-3121. Politely ask for your Democratic senator and leave a message. Say something along the lines of, I'm strongly urging you not to vote in favor of Senate Bill number 5, the Laken Riley Act, when it comes out of committee. Say the Laken Riley Act unfairly targets our immigrant community and gives way too much power to ICE, as well as the police. I'm David Feldman, reminding you, Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. No, that's not it. Quaginta millones American esuriunt. 40 million Americans are hungry tonight. No, that's not it. Here we go. Fortis esto et tutare debilis. Stay strong and protect the weak. You know, that I should put on a coffee mug. Fortis esto et tutare debilis. Stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you to Bob in the chat room. Thank you. How did this show end up this long? Trying to keep these shows down to an hour. Thank you to Bob in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. Thank you to Mila for keeping the conversation civil in the chat room. Leave a comment. I read all your comments. Please subscribe to my newsletter. Subscribe to this channel. Check out the garbage over at shopdavidfeldman.com. What else? Oh, and share this, please. And if you have any decency, you will call the U.S. Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121. You will ask your senator, Democrat, tell your Democratic senator, do not vote in favor of Senate Bill number 5, the Lake and Riley Act, when it comes out of committee. Say it unfairly targets our immigrant community and gives way too much power to ICE. If you have a Republican senator, call your Republican senator. But I think you'll make more headway with your Democratic senator. Thank you so much. I will see you early Wednesday morning at 2:30. Thank you.